Hi, and welcome to Extra Serving, a Nation's Restaurant News podcast. I am your host, Holly Petre. Today, we're going to be talking about the latest trends in restaurants. A few years ago, we were talking about Sweetgreen and Wingstop, both brands that viewed themselves as tech companies first and restaurant companies second. Now, there's a new trend across restaurants where they are more marketing companies that sell food than restaurants with a good marketing team. Chipotle's, McDonald's, and Taco Bell have all been named by Rolling Stone as some of the top 20 marketers across the country throughout all industries. So what earned them this title, and how are restaurants acting like marketing companies? We have the expert Alicia Kelso on today to talk about that. Also, Toast, which unveiled an extremely controversial fee earlier this year, has walked back on the policy. The fee was 99 cents on any orders of $10 or more, and the fee went straight to the customer rather than the restaurant. Restaurants had no choice of taking the fee off themselves and thought it would deter customers from buying from them. The fee has now been removed from Toast's system. What does it mean that the company is listening to its customers, and what does it hold for the future of the tech company? This week's interview is Brian Sullivan, VP of Culinary for Red Robin Gourmet Burgers and Brews. And now it's time to introduce my lovely co-hosts.
I'm Sam Oches, Editor-in-Chief of Nation's Restaurant News.
I'm Leigh Zinsmeister, Managing Editor, Nation's Restaurant News.
And I am Alicia Kelso, Executive Editor of Nation's Restaurant News.
Belgioioso Cheese is a family-owned and operated company specializing in artisan Italian cheese making. Using only natural ingredients and fresh, local Wisconsin milk, master cheesemakers handcraft a full line of exceptional cheeses, guided by a commitment to quality and a respect for tradition. Ask your distributor about Belgioioso's award-winning fresh mozzarella, burrata, ricotta, mascarpone, American grana, and Parmesan. At Belgioioso, every cheese is a specialty. Welcome to the podcast, Alicia.
Thanks for having me, Holly.
Marketing expert.
Yeah.
That's what
she
Holly
is.
says.
She used to work in social media. She's a marketing expert.
She's much more so than us. That's for sure.
I mean, she wrote the article on it, basically.
That's all it takes.
That's all it takes.
Not basically. She actually literally wrote the article.
Literally.
It's like a dissertation.
It was very good, Alicia. And I felt very informed after reading it. And I was like, huh. But that Rolling Stone thing is really interesting. We can kind of roll right into that because I thought that was a really interesting element that these three brands, Chipotle, Taco Bell, and McDonald's, had their marketing executives named to this Rolling Stone list of like top marketers. They're the only three restaurant brands, but it was only 20 people. So I think that three restaurant brands is a pretty good sign. And I think we can all agree that those three companies are head and shoulders above the rest of the industry. That, you know, it makes sense. This list made sense to us. We've been talking about McDonald's marketing for forever. They have that big marketing war chest. We've talked about Taco Bell's marketing and Chipotle's marketing. They're all run by marketers. So I think that it's really interesting to talk about this in depth, the fact that restaurants now are serving more as marketing companies where that's kind of their shtick rather than the food. So I don't know. I think that's fascinating.
I would say parallel to the food. I want to be cautious about that. I certainly don't think that Chipotle is, not a food company, or Taco Bell or McDonald's, but I get what you're saying here. And that was kind of the premise of the article. And I, obviously I gravitate toward this topic because I did spend 7 years in a marketing department, and I learned a tremendous amount doing so, including the launch of a new brand campaign and all the workings that went behind it. The three companies that were identified by Rolling Stone obviously were not a surprise because they have been creating some really interesting, I would say, industry and other industry leading campaigns. We will be talking about some of the things that they've been doing much more in the near term because other players are going to pull directly from the playbook here. And what I mean by that is, the smartness of these campaigns where, take McDonald's as an example, they didn't add any SKUs to some of these campaigns. The Grimace Shake included one new flavoring that was added to their otherwise traditional shake. Their Travis Scott cactus plant, those collaborations, they didn't include any new SKUs. So they're doing this marketing, these marketing campaigns without adding a significant amount of operational complexity. And it reminds me of when I first started covering this industry about 10, 12 years ago. That was not the case. a lot of companies would just add layers and layers and layers of SKUs to push out buzzy new campaigns and buzzy new headlines. And I think it kind of, there's a confluence of things happening here. And chief among them is how we've just become smarter operators as an industry since the pandemic. That said, these three companies have giant marketing budgets. And of course, they're going to be recognized for their efforts because they have the ability to do things and get top of mind, in a way that other companies just simply can't. But again, I think that the way that they're tapping, especially the way they're tapping into their consumers to help curate their brands. For example, Chipotle with taking TikTok influencers and adding those wildly popular creations to the permanent menu. Taco Bell telling its fans, please vote for our new sauce sayings. The fan curation, I think can be duplicated, in a pretty cost effective way for smaller and emerging brands to do. Do you need to tap into influencers? Maybe, I went to a restaurant opening in Louisville a couple weeks ago, and there were probably 20% of us were media and the rest were influencers. And I was like, that's really smart. That they were local influencers, but they're tapping into, these sort of the people who are more directly aligned with the customers. So I think this is going to be, I think we're early days here of this sort of fan curation, customer curation. I think it's necessary to think about how to inject your brand in a way that includes that sort of collaborative effort from customers, from, that tapping into the creator economy, if you will. Josh Halpern, who's the CEO of Big Chicken, talked at length about this during the Texas Restaurant Association show last week when he was doing a fireside chat. He predicted it 5 years from now, we'll be doing much more by way of fan curation of our brands. That's what these younger consumers especially expect. And so I think it's time to start thinking about how we do that.
Yeah, I think all of that, this is why you're the marketing expert, Alicia. Thank you for joining and imparting that wisdom, because all that was right on. And I think, to go back to the McDonald's example, the Grimace Shake, so much of the success of the Grimace Shake was out of McDonald's hands because it became a viral thing on TikTok where there was this whole thing of people dying after drinking the Grimace Shake. That's my old man way of summarizing what all that was. But what's amazing is that, McDonald's, of course, they did not, as far as I can tell, construct that in any way, right? Like they just let that happen. And in many ways, sort of shepherded that, right? Like they did not stand in the way of people taking that Grimace Shake trend and running with it, even though some brands could have looked at that and been like, oh, this is negative to us because it's them dying and it's tied to our brand. McDonald's understood this is not about us. This is about something else. And that became very massively successful. And so, to your point, Alicia, and about what Josh was saying at Big Chicken, what these brands have successfully understood is that it's about tapping into the zeitgeist. It's about tapping into the national conversation that nobody controls, right? The people ultimately control this thing. And if you put the right places in, if you play chess here and maneuver the right pieces in place, they will sort of get swept up by that zeitgeist. And that's hard to manipulate and control. But if you do it right and you just sort of ride the wave, I think it can be very successful. And, if you look at Big Chicken as an example, they have a really impressive chess piece in Shaquille O'Neal. That man is a part of the zeitgeist. He's been a part of my life for most of my life. I had a poster of the guy on my wall when I was a kid, so it's like he means something versus a chicken brand that starts from scratch and has nothing like that. McDonald's has been around for eons and all of us grew up on it. Chipotle, it's a little bit different because it's a newer brand, but I think they really understand what they have. And so likewise are sort of shepherding the customers around this, less irreverent than Taco Bell, more around quality, but still there is a conversation in the zeitgeist about Chipotle, and Chipotle is letting it happen. They're a really interesting case study because I think we've talked about this on the podcast before, but Steve Ells and the old regime used to try to be like, no, that's not who we are. No, we're about this. And I think what Brian Nichol understands is it's not about us. It's not about what we want. It's about what the customer wants of us. So that's for me, that's sort of the takeaway here of how do you control this? How do you participate in this? It's to understand where the national conversation is going and don't get in your own way. Just let it be and put the chess pieces in the right place. And I think it will take on a life of its own.
The point about Brian Nichol is interesting too, because he obviously was steering the ship at Taco Bell for so long and then moved over to Chipotle. And now both of those companies are being recognized for their marketing. And I don't think that's a coincidence. And meanwhile, at Taco Bell, we had, another marketing guy who's been running the company for the last 4 years. And then another marketing guy is stepping into his shoes next year. So Taco Bell knows they're good at marketing and they are not afraid to lean into it. And that's great. It's so interesting here because we have pieces like the Grimace Shake, like Sam was talking about, that really you can't start something like that. That's something that like the audience took the Grimace Shake and made its own like audience-driven marketing campaign. And then you have things where some of these things are so easily replicated from brand to brand. I mean, we were just talking this morning. I said, hey team, like I can think of 3 brands off the top of my head that have started working with musicians in the last week. Like who else is out there? And we came up with 7 or 8 off the top of our heads. And like working with celebrities isn't new, but it's certainly trendy right now. And it's something that even independent restaurants, every town has local celebrities, whether they're, actual musicians, actors, comedians, or just like the local influencer or, the guy everyone just knows. I mean, sometimes it's like the mayor is the local celebrity. And it's so easy to get people to where you don't need a marketing budget. Like, you don't need to be McDonald's working with Michael Jordan in the early 90s. Like, you can find your own version of that and put it to use. And once you do, maybe some of those audience-driven marketing campaigns will start themselves.
Well, to that point, the Michael Jordan and the McDonald's comparison, Michael Jordan was in McDonald's commercials, period, right? Like that was the extent of what a lot of the celebrity work was. To use a more modern day example, Raising Cane's and Post Malone. Post Malone owns a Raising Cane's in Utah. His face is splashed across their marketing. He's coming up with menu items. And again, with the McDonald's example, they're bringing in celebrities to partner on, those meals where it's not just stick your celebrity in a commercial and call it a day. Because like you guys probably, I don't watch many commercials anymore, but I'm fast to skip over those, right? But of course, I do look at social media. And so when the celebrity has more ownership in the thing, in the campaign, there is a brand extension across many channels, including social media, and especially social media, that it becomes a lot more of a partnership, I guess, with that celebrity. And so it's not about their likeness, their face. It's about their essence, their fan base, their network and connections, what they represent. And that it goes so much further than just a commercial will do.
And I think it's interesting. No, Alicia, you go ahead.
I insist on you going, but I do have a insist.
Well, so I was just going to say, I think it's an interesting point to think about the fact that these companies are all so cognizant of social media and the trends that are happening in social media. Like we look at Chipotle as a great example. They saw that they saw the burrito hack on TikTok. And they made a move and they took down a way to make that hack, but they saw the quesadilla and they made that a part of their menu. So they're cognizant of what's happening. Taco Bell's the same way with the Mexican pizza. It blew up and they helped it blow up with the way that they marketed it around it. They built a whole campaign. They have millions and millions of TikTok views on their own stuff. They built a musical around it. And you think about the way that they're just paying attention to the zeitgeist. Like they're not just letting it slip by. They're actively participating and looking at what's happening.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's a couple things here. One, the definition of celebrity has very quickly changed. So to Sam's point, where McDonald's used to use Michael Jordan just to be a spokesperson in a commercial, now there's applicability across multiple channels and multiple types of celebrities. And look at how the TikTok thing is a good example. I'm too old to know who these people are. I'm just simply too old to know who TikTok influencers are. But that was a wildly successful campaign, so much so that they made it, permanent, but then you take somebody who I'm not too old to know, and that's LeBron James, and Taco Bell, they didn't use him as a spokesperson in the Taco Tuesday tussle. They used him just to come to their defense about why they were doing it and just say, look, we all need Taco Tuesday. And I don't know if his, leveraging him worked, but something in there worked. So again, that whole definition, that whole idea of celebrity has changed to the point where, my kid is an advocate of Mr. Beast. We all know that by now. And, all the way from that to the TikTok folks to LeBron and everyone in between, and just leveraging all of it and all of them in so many different ways. I do want to make mention quick, because Holly touched on this, about the succession plan at Taco Bell and how intentional it seems that they are, they're tapping their leaders based on their marketing and branding prowess, right? The incoming CEO, Sean Tresvant, comes from Nike. And, during a presentation at the National Restaurant Association show in May, I learned that Nike is by far the most favorite brand identified by Gen Z consumers. And that is because it is a lifestyle brand. That is what they like about Nike, that they don't buy Nike every day. They might buy Taco Bell every day or every other day, or at least every week. They're not going to be spending that much money on shoes that frequently. So the fact that this is a non-frequent brand that they identify as their favorite brand, again, I think it goes back to that intentionality, and it's a lifestyle and the authenticity of it. And if there's no connection there, I have a hard time believing that there's not. Final point I want to bring up, per Leanne's point, when we talked about the musicians that brands are collaborating with, Holly thinks that Paris Hilton is a legitimate singer.
She is.
That did come up this morning, and I was surprised.
Holly, are you old enough to remember Paris Hilton's singing career?
So I can't legally sing the song on this podcast, but I would if I could.
We just had to spend a lot of money for you to do it, and thank God that we're not going to do that. Yeah, that's oof, ouch. Well, anyway, at one point I was going to make, though, 2 points to piggyback off Alicia really quick, which is, Sean comes from Nike, but not just Nike. He comes from the Jordan brand, and even more so the Air Jordan brand, even more so than Nike, is that lifestyle. I mean, these are $150, $200 pairs of shoes, and people collect them. And, saying you have Jordans or wearing Jordans, I mean, that is it's deeply meaningful to those who purchase those shoes and collect those shoes in ways that even having just a Nike, pair of shoes is not. So yes, Sean deeply, deeply understands that. And the last point I'll say too is I had an opportunity last year to get into the Chipotle social media war room. Because that's here in Columbus, that their second headquarters. And, it's fascinating because there was an army of 20-somethings in that room, and there were screens all over the wall of real-time social media posts. And they are, of course, watching it like a hawk because they have to. And I think that is the difference between these major chains like Chipotle and Taco Bell and McDonald's compared with even a Big Chicken or other emerging brands or whatever, is resources, right? Like if you have one social media person following stuff on their phone, that's one thing. And that's, okay, you can tweet once in a while. But if you really want to be serious about participating in the zeitgeist, you should consider having a social media war room armed with a bunch of 20-somethings, because it's a big conversation and it is not something to take lightly. So as you grow, I would say put money into your marketing department and hire a bunch of 20-somethings to be following that stuff.
That's almost not me anymore. It's so scary.
That's when Holly gets laid off.
The day I turn 30, I get laid off.
Bye.
Well, so Alicia brought up lifestyle brands, which I think is really interesting because Taco Bell is probably the prime example of a lifestyle brand. They've had merchandise. They invite fans to vote. They have a great loyalty program where people get food first. I mean, like when Taco Bell creates clothing, it sells out immediately, like immediately. And I think that that's a really interesting, I mean, when you think of lifestyle brands, I know Sweetgreen, which I mentioned earlier, which viewed itself as a tech company, though they've backed away from that. Go listen to Sam's episode of Takeaway with Nathaniel Rue if you want to hear more about that. But nice plug, I know. But the Sweetgreen is also a lifestyle brand. I know they're not in Columbus, and I don't know if they're in Louisville, but for those of us who have them, it's become a lifestyle brand. They have their loyalty program where they're selling merchandise now. They are trying to curate this lifestyle brand in a way that Taco Bell has really done successfully. And when you are involved in a brand wholly, like when you have clothes, when you have other merchandise, when you get to vote on sauce packet names, like that's a holistic experience with a brand, and it makes you much more involved in there, and it makes you want them to succeed.
You become a billboard for their brand, right? Like Sweetgreen, the best example of them, because this is relevant to me because I have one of these, is the tote. They've got tote bags, right? And I have a Sweetgreen tote bag, and I don't have a Sweetgreen in my neighborhood, and yet I still, we would take that to the farmer's market, right? Because it's a practical, useful tote. So yeah, you're a billboard for the brand. That is the essence of becoming a lifestyle brand.
But that also indicates, from my vantage point, Taco Bell has had a merch line for a long time. I would say 20 to 25% of the pitches I get in my inbox are new merch lines from brands. And we're talking every regional brands like, Torchy's Tacos. Merch is the thing now. It's past being a trend. It's just sort of becoming, again, more of an expectation. And they're not just merch lines that support these brands. They're changing them up. Seasonality, Chick-fil-A just switched to its sauce merch, and now it's going to switch to another kind of merch line. And so when you talk about the lifestyle brands, yes, every single restaurant brand with a marketing budget is really trying to sprint toward that idea of getting these customers to be those so-called walking billboards, and complementing that with those exclusive opportunities in the app, because they are all also adding or iterating their loyalty program. So I think the two of those things together is creating a new sort of world for restaurant marketing that we're sort of talking about right now.
And there's a lot to talk about. I mean, we've bounced around on the term of marketing because it's so big. I think that's some of the reason why it's become so ubiquitous among some of these restaurant brands, is because marketing is huge. It now encompasses threads, which some companies are using really well. It encompasses Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Like there's just, the platforms multiply. And when you think about that, you have to have a presence on all of these, you need a big team to do it.
Yeah. Video games is another really relevant trend that's been manifesting, I think, for well before the pandemic. But we all know, video game usage exploded during the pandemic because everybody was home. And now it's expanding beyond demographics, like, older demographics are using video games more than they've ever done. I know my son he's a video gamer. So you are able to tap into a huge swath of demographics by injecting yourself into that arena as well. It's not a job for the faint of heart. It's certainly not, especially with how fast it moves. It was one of my big challenges at my last job. Sam, you mentioned social media listening. I would argue that was the most important part of my job in that marketing and social media department was, okay, how can we pounce on what the conversation is? What are our fans talking about? What do people want from us? And really leveraging everything that we could, whether it was just a small conversation or something. So I think that it's a challenge, but I also think it's impossible to keep up with in some circumstances. And that's maybe another reason why companies are relying a little bit more on their consumers to help produce some of this content, this co-collaboration, if you will.
And to our listeners, if you'd like to collaborate with us, please reach out to any of us. We'd love to collaborate with you.
I thought you were going to say go follow us on social media or something, but yeah, that works too.
You can also follow us on social media, but I think it's nice to collaborate with restaurant folks. We'd love to get tours of your restaurants. We'd love to come and visit. So hit us up. We're here. So now let's move on to Toast. Wah wah. Kind of like a little. So they introduced that really controversial 99-cent fee a few weeks ago. That was basically a fee that customers had to pay that restaurants could not take on themselves. And that was a really interesting thing that restaurants disliked, was that obviously.
It's a really fun way to put it. That was an interesting thing that restaurants disliked.
I mean, because they were like, we'll take on the fee, it's fine, but the customers seeing an additional fee is a lot for a lot of customers. The service charges add up when you order online, and people already know it's bloated when you order online. So it's become an industry to add more prices on. And so now Toast has removed that fee. It was 99 cents over $10. And so they've completely removed that fee. And I mean, I think it's a good thing. I think restaurants are pretty happy about it.
Yes.
Yes. If I may, I still can't see Sam on camera, so I have no idea when he's about to speak for anything.
I've been making faces at you this whole time.
Oh, I assumed that. I just don't have any cues when you have something to say, so I would just start talking.
Go for it.
Ironically, I think what Toast really has here is a marketing problem. They introduced this fee out of the blue, didn't really explain it very clearly, didn't give restaurants or consumers a choice on who's going to pay it, how's this going to work. They just said, hey, you all owe us an extra $1 now. And consumers and restaurants took that exactly how you would expect. And then even Wednesday this week, when they walked it back, their apology, comments, whatever you want to call it, reads very sorry, not sorry to me. It's, well, we're trying to keep your costs low, but I guess you don't see it that way. So that's fine. We'll stop trying. And I mean,
it's not us, it's you.
Exactly. It's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm sensitive to it, but it felt very well, we're trying to help you, but if you don't want to help, that's fine. And I think the fee was never going to be a good thing in anyone's eyes except Toast. But I think there are probably ways they could have introduced it or phrased it, or other features they could have implemented, like having the restaurants pay the fee if they want or whatever, that could have helped it at least go over a little better so that they didn't have to walk it back, a month later. So interestingly, I do think this technology company has a marketing problem, or a PR problem, but they kind of can go hand in hand. So I don't know.
Yes, that is right. It's a PR nightmare, I think. And the response, the walk back, did not do them any favors. I mean, look, this is an industry where when McDonald's raises the price of a quarter pounder by a quarter, their fans freak out. You cannot slap any amount of money onto a value-oriented business, especially because, let's face it, on the QSR, fast casual side of things, 99 cents is not nothing. That is, for 99 cents over $10 orders, that is as much as 10% of the check. That is a lot of money for a value-oriented business. And for much of this country that participates in restaurants for the value of it, that's not nothing. And so there are any number of ways in which I could say that the decision to do that was not a good one. But yeah, it should have always been an option. It should have always been something, there should have been a higher threshold. If you put a 99-cent fee on an order of $50 or more, well, I'm not going to bat an eye at that, because then there's okay, well, I'm ordering for my whole family. I'm not going for the value or, buy now. And 99 cents, what's that to $50?
You weren't going to do the math on that, Sam?
I'm not a numbers guy. This is why I do words for a living. I just talk until somebody tells me to shut up. So yeah, it was ill-conceived. And it's so fascinating that it was Toast for me, because Toast was cruising. Now they weren't making a profit. That was the big problem. But brand wise, and if you want to go back to our last conversation on these brands and talking about branding and brand affinity and people lifestyle brands, Toast was it. When it comes to POS, everybody I was talking to, especially in the emerging brand sector, it just felt like it's Toast. Toast is our go-to. They made it so easy for us. We love Toast. And so to kind of spoil that brand affinity with that move was ill-conceived. Let's just say that. And I'm not going to try to figure out why it happened the way it happened. But yeah, now to say, oh, well, we were trying to save you money, but I guess we'll take it back. Like, no, own it, and just move on and hope that people figure it out. But here we are talking about it again, because it's just, it has been, yeah, there's been a pretty severe messaging problem. And yeah, restaurant operators had every right to be mad about this because it was thrust upon them. And again, just to reiterate, their customers are not happy with any amounts of fees put on top of their bill. And so for it to be the restaurant here stuck in the middle, they had no choice. Lose across the board for the customer and for the restaurant.
By the way, that's 85,000 restaurants. So the impact here is vast.
Yeah.
And, to your point that Toast was it, they were riding high. I saw several conversations within my LinkedIn network putting it out there, I need an alternative to Toast. So I don't know if those manifested, but just the optics, were solidified. And I think, there was a House Committee on Small Business, a congressperson that threatened to investigate this. That's how bad this was. So I think we just have to stop being so fee, heavy in this industry. And I think, I sometimes wonder, this is purely speculative, if Toast thought that this would be okay because we've kind of become numb to fees because we have them at every stop. We've got, fees to cover our servers' health insurance. We've got, of course, delivery fees. I got a fee from a brand I will not name, that was a pretty hefty fee just for using online ordering. I picked it up. Why are they charging me a fee for that? Because I maladjusted their labor structure? I don't know. But we are getting really numb to fees. There's obviously starting to be some pushback, but that I'm kind of wondering if Toast thought that this would just be another thing that we would be willing to absorb. And obviously that's very much not it. What strikes me about this is that Toast came out and said that they were going to use this money to fund software improvements. They were charging their customers, for their very progress on their business strategy. And I just don't, if we have to charge fees, to run our business and to progress in our business, that seems really wonky to me. I mean, I think a better way to do this maybe would have been to just look at the pricing structure, tier it with their restaurant customers, do something other than putting it on the backs of every order $10 and above. And then, my final point here is that profitability piece, Sam, that you mentioned. We cannot charge fees to achieve profitability. We can't do it. And, this is a long-winded conversation that we've had about several companies, many of them tech companies, that were just thrown all this money, this VC money thrown, throughout the past 3 years to keep up with this vast acceleration from the pandemic. We are normalizing really quickly, and profitability is going to become way more critical than it has been. We needed the top line stuff to get through the past 3 years, but I think investors especially are going to become very weary of, that bottom line, not being able to figure out the bottom line piece. And I can tell you, fees ain't it. Fees.
Yeah. And look, I mean, not to sound like the get off my lawn grandpa over here, but these tech companies, I mean, we've been through a decade of tech companies not turning a profit and them kind of, thumbing their nose at the consumer and charging crazy amounts of money to fund their, whatever they're doing over there. And I think, I don't know if I speak for all consumers, but I can say for myself, I am increasingly cynical of the tech sector and these tech bros who are getting massive payouts. And I read all these stories about these tech companies who have people on staff making six figures, not doing anything. And then you're going to give me a fee. And so what I think is really interesting, again, sort of the timing of this, is we're all getting a bunch of fees to the point the government is investigating these trash fees that are charging all of us crazy amounts of money. But also B, the tech sector is losing a lot of goodwill because it's not just in food service. I mean, you look at Meta and DoorDash, and you even go back to like WeWork and the failure of WeWork. I think consumers, there's going to be a pushback, and it's coming soon of, okay, enough. You guys are having your little fun in Silicon Valley. Toast is based in Boston. But anyway, you're having a little bit of fun. And by the way, I'm so sorry to everybody at Toast who's listening to this. I'm not directing this to you. You guys still seem great. I'm more directing this, my own cynicism at the tech sector writ large, which is, you're designing all these fancy tools and having all this fun, trying to tell us what the future is going to be, and you're making us pay for it. Like, I don't know. I'm cynical to that. And I think I like to say I'm a sort of a cross section of America because I live in the cross section of America in Columbus, Ohio. And I just suspect a lot of people feel that way too. And so there will be pushback. So if you are another tech company, and last thing I was going to say, this is on top of a restaurant industry that has started to ask us to tip for counter service. And I love dearly the food service employees, the labor workforce. They need to be paid more. But customers are now being asked to tip them to pay them more. And then we're getting these fees. And then we're getting this, that, and the other thing. It's getting out of control. And a few weeks ago, I had this experience where I was coming home from band practice. Yes, coming home from my band practice. That'll be another podcast for another day to talk about that. But it was late. I was hungry. And my family was out of town, and I'm like, it's 10 o'clock. Shoot, I'm going to get DoorDash, and I'm going to stay up late, and I'm going to eat some food that's not good for me. I ordered from a very well-known top 10 sports bar chain. I'll leave it at that. And got it via DoorDash because I'm lazy. And I got 10 chicken wings and an order of fries. Anybody want to guess how much I paid for that? Once I added
$45.
Well, it's a good guess. It was $32 for 10 chicken wings and an order of fries to be delivered to me. And that was the last time I've used DoorDash. Sorry, DoorDash. I'm just blown away. It just blows me away. And it wasn't only DoorDash's fault, right? The restaurant had its own fees and DoorDash had its fees. Clearly, this inspires some emotion, and I'm close to it in my position here. But imagine how much people who are bootstrapped, who are counting their, change to eat, and you want to charge them 99 cents on top. Sorry, I'm emotional. I'll stop.
Well, and who have kids at home who can't easily get out of the house to eat. So delivery almost becomes, it's not just a convenience all the time. I think that's important to note.
Right.
But, as I mentioned earlier, Sam, I got a random fee from an also unnamed brand because I went and picked it up. They charged me a fee for digital ordering, and it was like $6. It was a hefty fee.
I get that I'm paying a surcharge for my laziness, right? Okay, whatever. But to charge for picking it up.
You're deterring me. And you're going to siphon people into third-party delivery, and then you're going to lose more.
And there's no cost to them. There's no cost to them, right? Like it's kind of like those credit card transaction fees. And, once upon a time, it was way more popular to charge a fee if you used a credit card, right? Because there were those transaction fees. Those might still exist to some degree. But to me, it's that same idea of like, there's no cost to this. There was no cost to you ordering digitally and picking it up yourself. But they make excuses to try to slip in these fees. And guys, I just want to reiterate, if you're a tech company out there, no matter what company you are, or if you're a restaurant company, the jig will be up eventually. And to some degree, a lot of people dodged a bullet by not going into recession, because a recession would have really thrust everybody into counting their pennies and noticing the fees a lot more. But we're still going to get there. You can't do this kind of stuff.
There is an unnamed chain here in New York City that I order from quite often. But I've stopped ordering online because you have to tip at least 12% online. There's no option to not tip.
12%.
And to go pick it up, to walk and pick it up, to pick it up yourself, at least 12%. There's no option to do no tip. And so that's a junk fee. That's a fee that you're paying to pick up. So I go there in person and I order and wait in line, and instead of ordering ahead and getting my loyalty points.
You're subsidizing their unwillingness to pay their employees more. We're going to get a lot of emails from this one.
So we welcome your emails. We'll write an article about it.
It's a conversation, right? Like you might disagree with us or me, especially, or maybe you agree, but like this is all a conversation. And I will 100% give Toast the benefit of the doubt that they did not understand probably when they made that fee that this would inspire such emotion in people. Okay, like let's own it and move on and let's have a conversation about it. Because I think Toast will rebound from this okay. Because as I understand, I mean, restaurants love their product. So yeah, let's make it a conversation and figure out what to do, because we got to pay our employees better. We got to make a better experience through technology, and we got to make money. We have to turn a profit. So we got to figure out how all those things can happen in concert with each other without, screwing the customer over.
You named a lot of really hard things, Sam. That's not easy for a lot of people to do.
Hey, restaurant industry is not for the faint of heart.
It's certainly not.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. And I'm going to throw it over to Brett's interview with Brian Sullivan, VP of Culinary for Red Robin Gourmet Burgers and Brews. And it's a great conversation, so I recommend listening to it. But thank you guys for joining me today.
Thanks, Holly.
Thanks, Holly.
Thank you.
Belgioioso Cheese is a family-owned and operated company specializing in artisan Italian cheese making. Using only natural ingredients and fresh, local Wisconsin milk, master cheesemakers handcraft a full line of exceptional cheeses, guided by a commitment to quality and a respect for tradition. Ask your distributor about Belgioioso's award-winning fresh mozzarella, burrata, ricotta, mascarpone, American Grana, and Parmesan. At Belgioioso, every cheese is a specialty.
How you doing? Are we already?
I'm doing great. It is good to see you, man. It's been a minute.
It has. Where were you the last time we spoke? Maybe at California Pizza Kitchen?
Callum, you are correct. Yes, California Pizza Kitchen.
And now you are at Red Robin Gourmet Burgers and Brews. How?
That's correct.
And when did you get there?
I joined January. I'm coming up on about 7 months here now. So it's been quite the ride so far. A lot of fun.
I bet. So what have you been up to?
Well, really the better burger platform has been my primary focus, and rolling out a bigger, better, juicier burger. I kind of walked in to that kind of really at the beginning phases, but we went from cooking our burgers on a belt-driven char grill to flat tops, which is fantastic. And so yeah, it's been quite a journey so far. We just actually rolled out the new better burger on June the 12th, so coming up on a month now.
And so does that mean you had to install flat tops at all of the restaurants?
We did. You can imagine just logistically what a challenge that is for over 500 restaurants. So we pulled the char grills out, installed flat tops in all of our locations. Painstaking process to vet out the operational technique needed, behind the training. And it's been fantastic. And I think one of the things that excites me just from, as I think about it in the restaurant, bringing pride back into the restaurants for the cooks, right? Such a huge, important part.
And so why does a flat top bring pride in when a char grill doesn't?
Well, for me personally, I feel like that's the best way to cook a burger, right? If you're going to cook a burger, I think it needs to be cooked on a flat top. We're using a patty that we're smashing. So we're searing that bottom texture. We're locking in the juices. And we're caramelizing the beef as well. And in that, I think it's for the cooks and for the managers as well. They're not just taking a patty, placing it on a conveyor belt and waiting for it to come out on the other end, right? They're actually cooking. They're using their hands. There's more talent involved. It's just more interactive. And I think that brings back a lot of the pride factor for the cooks and the managers as well.
That is a heck of a training process. Like how did you do that? Because if you are accustomed to putting a patty on a conveyor belt and walking to the other side or whatever and pulling it off, that's a completely different. You might not have any idea how to actually cook a hamburger. So what kind of training was necessary?
A lot of hands-on training, a lot of video training. We start really small, take one restaurant, roll it out into one restaurant, train all the managers. We brought some of the managers into the innovation kitchen here in Denver, trained them hands-on here, then went into a restaurant, trained them and the cooks. And then we kind of mushroomed it out from there, added a few more flat tops in a couple more restaurants, and then we expand out to a market, put it in a market, test it, vet it out, and it was received so well by our employees, managers, and then our guests as well. They definitely noticed a difference because it's a bigger, thicker, tastier burger.
So even though you're smashing it, it's thicker.
It is. Yeah, it's thicker. It's the same amount of the same weight of the patty, but it is a thicker burger just because you have the burgers that cook on a belt, they have to be manufactured a certain way, right? And so they're not as thick in general because they have to be slotted so that as they're going through the conveyor, the fat can drip out and it can cook. Because you put a thick burger on a belt, it won't cook, or it'll take a lot longer for it to cook, right? So there's definitely a difference in flavor, texture, and the visual appearance as well. And we changed the bun too. We went to a traditional brioche bun, which is, when you think about gourmet burgers, to me, that's probably the fit for a perfect patty too, right? Is the right bun. And we were using a kind of a cross-cut top brioche or bun in the past. And so this brioche is lighter, it condenses down. It's got that beautiful appearance on the exterior. So burgers just look fantastic.
You guys have a fair number of franchisees too, right? Aren't you mostly franchised? Or
we do, yeah. No, we're not. We're I think it's about 160, 70 franchise partners.
Okay.
Locations, yeah, at 500. So we're primarily still corporate owned.
But a lot of franchisees and saying, hey, franchisee, please install an expensive new piece of equipment, okay? How was that conversation? Or did it happen before you arrived?
No, you know what? No, it did. It happened when I was here, and it was it's kind of the same thing. They understood the vision of just elevating the guest experience and improving food quality. I think over the years, Red Robin had kind of lost its way just a little bit. So we were kind of getting focused back on the core and the DNA of Red Robin. So conversations about it, and then kind of was the same thing, Brett. We would bring them into Denver. We'd actually cook with them, cook for them, cook with them, take them through the process, let them see it, feel it, taste it. And once you go through that process, you compare them side by side. There is truly no comparison. So they bought in immediately, and we're all in from the moment that we got through that experience.
As you know, because you've been doing this for a while, just because something is better doesn't mean that customers who are accustomed to something being a certain way are going to like it, even though it's better in theory. Was there a lot of pushback from guests saying this is not the Red Robin burger I am accustomed to?
Not at all. Actually, it was a complete opposite right from the beginning. I think people noticed the difference in quality. They noticed the difference in taste, the visual appeal as well. So yeah, it's always a little bit unnerving to do something like that. It's a major initiative, and we just felt like it was the right thing to do, and for all of the reasons that I just spoke about. And our guests feel the same way too. They notice it and they appreciate it, and it's adding value back, to or helping us add value to the brand.
And is the beef itself different? I mean, it's shaped differently, clearly, as you said. It's thicker and juicier. Is it a different mix of beef? Are there different suppliers? Did you have to do that?
Yeah, so that was quite a process itself. So I probably spent, I would say, at least 2 months just looking at the right grind, the right formulation of fat to beef. And we ended up going with 75-25, which cooked the best for us. And we changed the grind a little bit bigger grind, a little bit looser grind too. So it's not so condensed. And again, that patty was completely different, right? So this was kind of happening simultaneously. And yeah, we've always used fresh, never frozen product, and we're continuing to do that. So that's really important to us as well. And we do have quite a few different partners that we work with across the country, our vendor partners. And so we had to kind of do that process with each one of them. And so it took some time and a lot of back and forth, a lot of trips to their plants as well to actually, to be on the line when product came off the line. We'd cook on flat tops in their plant, and then we'd bring it back here, emulate it here in the restaurants. And so it was a grueling process. I learned a lot, and I think that all of us did here actually in the kitchen as well. And we landed in a really good spot. Super proud of the work that we did.
Is it seasoned differently at all, or the same?
Same seasoning blend, but actually that's a great point. We realized that we were under seasoning our burgers a bit, and our guests were telling us that. So we went in and we increased the seasoning on all of our burgers, and we're doing it on our fries as well. So as you know, seasoning is just such an important aspect of cooking, and we were falling a little bit short there, so we've corrected that as well.
And how is it all prepared? Is it seasoned? Is it all the meat kind of seasoned beforehand, or is it pre-formed into patties? Is it formed into patties in the restaurants? How does that work?
Yeah, it comes in. It's as I mentioned, it's fresh. Comes in a puck shape, kind of an expanded puck, not like a true ball, a little bit more expanded. So it gives us a little bit more consistency when we're pressing it to order, because we're not using a mold. We're doing a free-form press, so we have to train how much pressure to put down for how long. We tried the mold, but the molds were kind of, interestingly enough, they were inconsistent for us. So we found that we had better consistency using a puck that had been just pressed out a little bit. And then we season each burger patty to order. So it's all hand done.
So it sounds like you get more consistency if you empower the cooks to kind of, cook the burger rather than having it in a mold, which I like. As everybody's talking about AI and computers taking over the world, which is ridiculous, or maybe I'm wrong and maybe they already have, but
yeah, we don't know that, do we?
No, it's nice to know that, the human element is super important, which is nice.
It is. And again, it's just that pride. It's that pride factor. Our cooks want to cook. We can simplify it to a point, but at some point, it's nice to bring that process back into the restaurant and give people the experience of cooking and working with their hands and making judgment calls on things, obviously following recipes. But look, you can't say it's exactly 2 minutes or it's exactly 3 minutes on a burger press. You've got to look at it, right? You got to use your eyes. You have to use your senses. You have to be engaged. And I think that that's what people feel coming off of a shift, like they accomplished something, they did something. It's not just like, oh, I put lettuce, it's not such an easy assembly piece now. That's really exciting for us, and to see it and to feel it in the restaurants.
Well, and to do that at more than 500 restaurants is pretty incredible. So nice job. The rollout's complete now?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I mean that part of it. I mean, we're still working on improving ingredients. When I started, we really went through every single ingredient that we were using in the restaurant, and we did sensory on everything that we're currently using. And we're like, look, how can we bring value back to our guests? What can we do in-house that we are, currently purchasing RTU or processed in terms of, produce or something like that. And so that process has been really exciting, especially for the people that have been at Red Robin, for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. The legacy or the tenure here is pretty deep, which is fantastic. Management level, office level. And so if you look back at the history of Red Robin, this is a legacy brand, of course, 50 years and plus. And in the beginning and over time, everything was scratch cooking. Everything in this restaurant was made from scratch, right? And a lot of restaurants were like that. Even in my past, it was the same thing. But as we've evolved, and as I think products as evolved as well, it gives us the opportunity to really explore, look, what can we do to improve ingredients? And that, for me, that's everything from pickles to mayonnaise to olive oil to garlic, anything that we're using. What can we do to either do it in-house, do it better, or to purchase a higher quality product? So we're in the process of doing that right now.
So you're doing a whole evaluation of every ingredient.
Every ingredient. We're upgrading every single ingredient, really. I mean, I would say every, I mean, and that's probably taking a little too far, obviously, but about 80% of the ingredients will be enhanced or improved on some level.
But Brian, haven't you heard that there's a labor shortage and that doing things in-house is increasingly difficult? Or maybe Red Robin is at full employment and there's no problem. I don't know. Like how do you balance operational complexities with improving your product?
That's a great point. And it is still a challenge, right? I mean, the labor market's still really tight. We seem to do a little bit better in the back of the house, which is good news for me in my world. Front of the house is a little bit more challenging. But yeah, the back of the house, we're pretty good. I think it really gets back to training, right? Explaining the reasons why we're doing what we're doing, and then letting them taste the difference of, product A versus product B. And an example of that for you would be pineapples. Right now, we're using a canned pineapple product. We're going to transition to fresh pineapple towards the end of the year. Okay, so there's a labor component to that, right? I have to get pineapples in, I have to trim them, then you have to core them, then we have to slice them. Cooking them on the flat top is the same as what we were doing in the past, so there's no change there. But when you take the amount of time, which is really maybe minutes more compared to taking a can of pineapples and draining it and then panning it and then cutting it and slicing it, it's 2 or 3 more minutes to do a fresh pineapple. And then you taste the difference with your managers and your cooks, and they're like, wow, okay. And that, you've sold it right there. And the same thing with our franchise partners and the guests. You just notice, there's really no difference between a canned pineapple and a fresh pineapple, right?
Although a canned pineapple is not as good, but possibly more consistent. I mean, I guess that's your job to procure good pineapples, which is probably easier said than done.
Yeah, actually, pineapples are one of the few things that are they're relatively consistent. Yeah, I've had that experience too in my past, and so, which is kind of surprising. But pineapples aren't one of those items that we struggle with too much. Avocados, that's a little bit different animal, and we use a lot of avocados as well.
I bet you do. So, what were you doing before you were at Red Robin?
At California Pizza Kitchen.
But was it an immediate switch from CPK to Red Robin? I don't know. I think there was a gap. I don't know.
You know what? There was a gap. I tell you what I was doing, Brett. I was just trying to. It was during the holidays, so I was transitioning. I was moving from LA to Denver, and so that was part of it. And then also transitioning just during the holidays. So. I had a couple of weeks off there. I probably should have taken a little more time, to be honest. But I had to get back to work, man.
So you're one of those kinds of chefs who needs to be busy all the time.
Yeah, my wife was not very fond of my decision, to be honest with you. She's like, hey, you need to take a month or 2 off, just to reset. And yeah, I don't know. It's not in my DNA, man.
So you were at CPK for what, 1,000 years? How long?
Yeah, right under like 999, right under 1,000. It was 34 years, actually.
My goodness. So you had never had to reformulate a hamburger before?
Well, interestingly enough, prior to leaving CPK, in October of last year, I launched the West Coast Burger at CPK.
Oh.
Yeah, so I was a Wagyu chuck brisket burger, brioche bun, and we had installed not flat tops, but we had installed kind of large skillets that went on top of our existing grills over there. So we were cooking them on a flat top, doing the buns on a flat top. So yeah, so that was kind of interesting timing there, isn't it?
Yeah, that was sort of preparing you to
Yeah, right.
Red Robin. That's interesting. So what you mentioned Wagyu, what the hell is up with Wagyu being everywhere? Like it's Arby's has a burger, it has a Wagyu blend, CPK, as you mentioned. Every place seems to be folding Wagyu into stuff. What's up with that? Is that marketing or something else or both?
I don't think it's marketing for me. I believe that there's like when I go to the store to buy steaks, I buy Wagyu because I feel like it has a kind of a buttery and almost like a nutty, buttery flavor, and the fat and the flavor of the fat and the beef itself, I just think it's my favorite. I just think it's outstanding. I mean, texturally, I don't really think there's that much a difference, but I think just from a flavor standpoint, there is a noticeable difference, and I love it. I think it's fantastic.
And I suppose it depends on the kind of Wagyu, because there's, super premium Japanese A5 Wagyu, and then there's American and Australian Wagyu, and then there are American Wagyu Angus hybrids and stuff. And sometimes it's hard to know what you're getting on a menu because it just says Wagyu.
Right. Yeah. I think, like the Japanese stuff, that's a whole different animal right there. Right. And literally and figuratively speaking. But I've been using the American version, and that's that the grass-fed or the stuff from Australia, the Australian product is grass-fed, which it's a little bit gamey for me. I'm not a grass-fed beef man. I like the American style. I just like the taste of it better. So yeah, that's why I landed on the American style Wagyu.
Yeah, I was just talking to a fancy fine dining chef who said exactly the same thing about grass-fed beef, grass-finished beef, because obviously all beef is fed grass. That depends on
right.
how that he likes the idea of grass-finished beef, but in terms of flavor, there is something magical about finishing cattle on grain.
I agree.
Are you going to be introducing any Wagyu to Red Robin? Burgers are its signature thing.
I'll tell you what, it's on my list.
Oh, cool.
Well, as soon as we get through these enhancements, through the end of this year, I'll be exploring that for 24 for sure.
That's exciting. Has there been some low-hanging fruit that you have already changed?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I mentioned the buns. I think that was one for sure. And then really, it's just mayonnaise. Mayonnaise is a big part of what we do here, right? You look at for mayonnaise, it's in probably 70% of our sauces. It's on 65% of our burgers. The mayonnaise that we are currently using, I believe, can be improved upon. Mayonnaise, pickles, tomatoes. The tomatoes, we're going to be going to vine ripened tomatoes in October as well. So, a new pickle, a new bun, a new patty, the way it's cooked. In addition to, pineapple, we're going to fresh avocado in the restaurants on the burgers. Currently, we're using HPP product. So doing fresh smashed avocado in-house on the burgers. So those are some of the things that, again, there's a small labor component attached to them, but the difference in the flavor and the quality and the value that it brings to our guests is outstanding. And, gourmet burgers, it's on our doors, right? It's on our buildings. So to have a gourmet burger, we need gourmet ingredients, and we need to serve the best ingredients that we can for the value and the price that we're asking.
It's interesting that you point out that by having more stuff being done in-house, you have more kind of pride and ownership from the cooks. It's only been 7 months and these implementations are relatively new, but do you think that's going to affect turnover at all?
The early indication is no. Some of these restaurants have been live for a few months now, and so that hasn't been the case. I think actually it's having the opposite effect. I think it's creating excitement within the restaurants for our management teams and our staff. They see all these changes coming, they taste it, they see how we're improving the food and how we're enhancing the guest experience, and they're excited, you know, and they're bought in. So I think it's a selling point for our managers, and it's bringing that excitement back into the restaurants, or just building on excitement that was there. One thing I forgot to mention that I'm excited about. Sorry. We also in June, we transitioned to hand breaded chicken sandwiches, cooked orders. So that's another. So you think about all of the components, right? Now we have to take chicken and we have to put it in the batter and we have to dredge it. And so there's a process there, but it's the same thing. Now we have this amazing hand breaded fried chicken sandwich that's just, you know, probably close to 50% thicker than the sandwich we have right now. And it's just incredibly flavorful, and the texture is a lot better. So that was another one. It's like, oh my gosh, now we're asking them to do flat top cooking, and now we're going to have them do this hand battered chicken sandwich. How's that going to play? And then as soon as they do it a few times, we put it in a little bit of a test. They taste the product, they see the difference. The pride factor again shoots up, and they're like, okay, we get it. We know why we're doing this, and we're in.
That's great. And what's the cooking staff like at a Red Robin? Is it like a kitchen manager and a couple of cooks, or how does it work?
Well, that's another great point, because as I mentioned, we kind of lost our way in the past. And one of the things that happened a few years ago is the brand eliminated kitchen managers from the restaurant, which is not a great thing to do. So we are in the process of reestablishing kitchen managers in each one of our locations. Hopefully by the end of the year, we will have designated kitchen managers in all of our locations. And again, it's saying that, hey, you know what? Kitchens are important to us. Our food is important to us. And that sends a very strong message to our managers and to our staff. So that's been a really welcome addition to the restaurants. And it also helps with the staff, right? Because now you have a leader back there. And so you have somebody that's leading the kitchen back there, and that employees can go to, and somebody that's on the line working with them, sweating with them back there and helping them. And that's a really strong message to send.
Yeah, and I imagine the GMs generally do not have kitchen experience, or not a lot of it. So it's good to have somebody doing that. And yeah, I mean, when you, in my experience, which is reporting on restaurants, not working in them, when you cut costs by reducing staff and stuff, it never goes well. Like, if you improve the quality, then that can bode really well for a restaurant. I've never seen a restaurant concept turn itself around by cutting corners. Doesn't work. It just accelerates the descent into oblivion.
You're absolutely right. It's like a kind of death by 1,000 paper cuts. You start cutting staff, you take the host out, you eliminate bussers, you pull a kitchen manager out, then you start cutting on ingredients, start getting cheaper ingredients or the portions on ingredients. And to me, it's a death march, right? Yeah. You're not going to survive long term, and especially in this environment. In the restaurant environment is, as you know, has just been increasingly difficult to maneuver over the past, especially since COVID, but even before that, it was tough. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, and it's interesting that what we've heard from consumers is they understand that the cost of everything is going up, and they will pay more if they get good quality. And if they don't get good quality at the prices they're paying, they're going to be angry, and they're going to let you know. So good job on fixing all this stuff. Have your costs gone up with new beef and things like that?
Oh yeah. Everything I'm touching has a price tag, Brett. But look, we're mitigating that. There were some opportunities with, when we look at the way things even are packaged and boxes that they come in, the size of boxes, and how we're managing just that part of it. And so there were some opportunities where we chose a product that was a higher quality, but we were able to negotiate a better price. So we offset that. But in general, look, I mean, higher quality ingredients, you're going to pay a higher price in general. So and that's why I'm grateful to be working for GJ Hart, our CEO, who has the vision and he understands the restaurant business, and he he's guiding the way on that and giving us the ability to make these changes. And so that's really that's really exciting for me and for everybody on the team over here.
Great. Well, it sounds like you've kind of landed on your feet at Red Robin, which is great to see. Thanks for taking the time to hang out with me for a while. It was great catching up. And while you were talking, I was looking on Google Maps where the closest Red Robin is, so I can go eat some of your food. Not too far. There's one. I'm in Brooklyn. There's one in Secaucus, New Jersey. I could get there.
How far Secaucus?
I mean, I'd have to take a train to Port Authority, and then there's a bus directly there. I know that actually because there's a Walmart in Secaucus, and the bus goes directly to Walmart, and Red Robin is like across the street from there. So,
well, you let me know when you want to go, and I'll make sure that we set you up over there.
I will do that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And thanks again for taking the time, and hope we get to do it again soon.
I would love that, Brett. It's great to see you, man. You look great.